When you think history, what pops into your head? Dusty old textbooks, big epic battles, maybe some serious-looking people in old black and white photos? Well, get ready to throw all of that out the window. We are about to dive into a version of history that's stranger, funnier, and just way more bizarre than you ever imagined.
So, if you're someone who thinks history is just a boring list of dates and facts, you are in for a serious surprise. We're going to prove that the past is anything but predictable, and we're going to start with one of the most powerful men in European history.
Yep, you heard that right. Napoleon Bonaparte, the military genius, the guy who reshaped an entire continent, was once forced to retreat from a massive swarm of bunnies. It sounds like something straight out of a cartoon, but I promise you it's a real historical event. And it's the perfect reminder that the past is filled with moments that are just too strange to make up.
And that whole rabbit incident? That's just the beginning. Let's start with the idea of leadership itself. You just assume leaders are human, right? Well, history has a few curveballs for you on that one. Sometimes, the ones in charge weren't exactly who you'd expect.
Okay, get ready for this one. Meet Incitatus, the horse who became a consul of Rome. No, I'm not kidding. The Emperor Caligula, to show just how much he despised the political elite, appointed his favorite horse to one of the highest offices in the Republic. It was the ultimate political insult, which means, for a little while, a horse literally held a position of power in ancient Rome.
A horse consul is wild, but what about real, actual power on the high seas? When you think of pirates, you're probably picturing someone like Blackbeard, right? Well, the most successful pirate in all of history wasn't a man at all. It was Qing Shi, a former prostitute who ended up commanding a fleet of over 1,500 ships. She was so dominant that the Chinese government couldn't beat her. They literally had to negotiate her retirement.
It wasn't just the rulers who were unexpected. Sometimes it was the gods. While we might think of a turkey as, Thanksgiving dinner, for the ancient Mayans, this bird was a divine creature. They didn't just eat them, they revered them as vessels of the gods, these powerful symbols of prestige.
Okay, so we've established that leaders can be unusual. But what about our basic understanding of the timeline itself? The facts we just take for granted? Well, prepare to have your sense of history completely scrambled.
Try to wrap your head around this. Oxford University was already an established university with students walking its halls for over 200 years before the Aztec Empire was even founded. It totally flips our perception of what's ancient and what's modern, doesn't it?
If you think changing the clocks for daylight saving is a headache, imagine this. Julius Caesar literally had to fix time itself. His calendar had drifted so far out of sync with the seasons that he just declared that the year 46 BC would be 445 days long. Can you imagine living through a year with 3 extra months? It was called the Year of Confusion, and yeah, for a very good reason.
38 minutes. Think about that. What can you do in 38 minutes? Make dinner? Watch an episode of a show? Well, back in the day, you could fight an entire war.
That's how long the Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896 lasted. It's the shortest war in recorded history. It kicked off at 9:02 a.m. and was completely over by 9:40 a.m. An entire international conflict from start to finish in less time than it takes to drink your morning coffee. And the weird truths just keep on coming. For 20 years, tug-of-war was an official Olympic sport. The 4th of July, not a national holiday in the U.S. for over 150 years. And get this, during World War I, the French built an entire fake Paris just to trick enemy bombers. The past is just jam-packed with these unbelievable little details.
Okay, so the leaders were weird and the timeline is a total mess. But what about the icons themselves? Let's pull back the curtain on some of history's most famous figures and discover their surprisingly human and sometimes just plain odd secrets.
Let's start with a giant of American history and a tiny little number, 135. What on earth could that possibly mean?
That number, 135 words, is the entire length of George Washington's second inaugural address. We imagine these grand, sweeping speeches, right? Nope, his was the shortest in history. He pretty much just said, "I'm honored, thanks for the job," and sat back down. It's a great reminder that sometimes the most powerful messages are the shortest.
And while we're on Washington, let's just bust one of history's biggest myths. Those famous wooden teeth? Yeah, never happened. His dentures were actually a grim mix of gold, ivory, and even teeth he bought from other people. The reality is way stranger and honestly, a bit more gruesome than the story we all know.
From one iconic president to the next. You know Abraham Lincoln's famous stovepipe hat? It wasn't just a fashion statement, it was his filing cabinet. He famously kept important letters, notes, and legal documents tucked right away inside it. Forget a briefcase, this was the original mobile office.
And the presidential quirks don't stop there. A surprisingly high number of U.S. presidents, 8 of them, including recent ones like Reagan, Clinton, and Obama, have been left-handed. That's a way higher percentage than in the general population. Is it a coincidence? Who knows? But it's a strange little thread connecting these leaders across different eras.
Let's finish this section with a figure we think we know, Genghis Khan. We all know him as a brutal conqueror, right? But beyond the battlefield, he was an incredible innovator. He established the YAM, one of the world's first ever international postal services. This network of relay stations let messages fly across his huge empire with incredible speed, connecting his world in a way nobody had ever done before.
So, we've had horse senators, wars that lasted less than an hour, and hats that were also filing cabinets. All of this really brings us to one big final question.
What all this shows is that history is not some static, dusty list of facts. It's a living, breathing collection of bizarre stories. Every famous person had their quirks, and every timeline is full of strange surprises. What we've talked about today, that's just scratching the surface. So the next time you open a history book, remember to wonder, what other incredible, unbelievable, and downright weird stories are still waiting inside?